like sprays here though.
Yeah. IKEA. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Lovely to see you zooming in, Dave. Thank you for our 24th of February meeting. Oh my goodness gracious me, the year is sort of sneaking by on us all, but it's wonderful to have you all here and attending to the business we have in hand today. Normal practice, health and safety, we're all very aware should we need to exit the building and where our assembly point is. And just looking around the room, we have a full attendance, so we've got no apologies to receive today, which is great. So we will begin with our usual manner for our off.
I just on the apology, sort of apology, I was thinking about leaving the meeting about 2 because we've got that other thing late on. I found it easier to do those interviews from home than here.
Okay, so what you're seeking then is early departure, is that correct?
Departure.
Okay, so I'll need to move and second that we accept that. Thanks, Fiona. Thank you, Steve. All in agreement that we enable early departure for our Councillor Daly. All in agreement that we say aye. Aye. Those against, that's carried. So thank you. So the affirmation gives us a chance to leave the business of our other worlds outside the door and enable us to be to consider the district as a whole as we enter this room, and we pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skills, wisdom and judgment through discussions and deliberations ahead of us today in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of Hiranui District at large. We commit individually and as council to the principles of integrity and respect, and to upholding the values that we believe distinguish and enrich our district. Thank you. You've all read the agenda and have come prepared. And just looking at the items, both decision and information items, is there any conflict of interest declarations? Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 5.3, the extension of the District Licensing Committee tenure. Given that I'm a member on that committee, I won't take part and happy to leave the room if other members require that.
Yeah, I'll do the same, but I don't think there's any reason to leave the table on this discussion. So yeah, thank you for the offer.
No reason to leave the room.
No, yeah, thank you. So myself, that's right. Thank you. So thanks, Pauline, for that. We are live streamed and we're using a recording device as normal practice. Thank you, Graham. And you should have all received an email in regard to the postponement of the General Manager's report for the Hammer Springs Thermal Pools and Spa. Sarah is away on conference and the timing just didn't quite suit for her to provide or be present even by Zoom. So we will receive that information at our next council meeting. So we will take the items both in open and in public excluded, take those on the papers. So we've all had that information. Can you confirm that, everybody? All got that information? Thank you. Is there any urgent business to attend to today other than what will be picked up in the minutes or from previous minutes or today's agenda? Fantastic, thank you. So councillors, we do need to sort of keep ourselves focused for today. We've got at 1 o'clock, normal presentation from the Canterbury Museum Trust. And so, yeah, we will try and work through, and then of course following that we do, at the conclusion of the meeting, we do have a workshop on cyber security from our start. So we'll try to keep to those times and get through the business so that, you know, relative ease to the day. I guess the other time constraint that Vince was talking about, and for myself, we have 4 o'clock appointments that we need to meet as well. So we just need to manage that in a timely manner. So councillors, let's move to the minutes. We've got 2 sets of minutes, our council meeting for the 27th of January, and we have the council meeting on the 3rd of February, which is our presentations meeting. So if we can just do a quick page turn for the first set of minutes from the 27th of January, and just check for any accuracy as far as those minutes go. So page 4 and 5, 6 and 7. Page 9, 10 and 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. Okay, so that's a pretty pleasing result, Graham, if there's no matters of accuracy that we need to attend to. So with that being the case, is someone please willing to move that we accept those minutes as true and accurate? I've got Fiona and I've got Vince, all in agreement to that, please say aye. Aye. Those against? That motion's carried, thank you. We will do the same and just consider if there are items, matters arising from that set of minutes. So page 4 and 5.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just in regards to the matters arising section, I requested an update on the Grierson Avenue potential proposal for the realignment of Gold Coast Road, and I just wondered if there was any further update that can be provided in this public meeting, given that we have received a letter and then a further email from Gold Club friends.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that, and I'll ask Hamish if he's got anything further to contribute. But yes, we all received a letter from the golf club this week. I have responded to that letter, just informing the golf club that whilst as of yesterday received the valuation, that valuation is pending as of the end of February, and that was the time frame. So I've just informed the golf club of that information. So have you got anything else you would like to contribute to that discussion? No. So, you know, once the valuation is received, I guess that will, you know, trigger some other process. So trying to keep everybody abreast. I totally understand that there is some frustration from members of our community, but we are looking to follow a good process here. So we can just be, you know, respected, I guess, as far as that goes. That I know it's seemingly slow, but it's really important that we follow a robust process so that we are confident in our mechanisms. So I've got nothing more to add. Something else?
Yes, supplementary to that. Firstly, is it possible, please, for all councillors to have a copy of that response that was sent to the golf club for our information?
To be fair, at this point, Joe sent that yesterday, and I haven't received it. I talked to Joe about putting those words together. She, in good faith, has responded. I've asked for that myself, so I haven't seen the letter myself. So once I get that, I will inform.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate that if we could have a copy. I just wonder if there's any potential update in regards to the we've talked about valuation, but the status of that little piece of reserve land, and we talked about the potential for a pathway through there should things move ahead, and a potential licence to occupy or relinquishing of reserve status. Is there any update on that work?
Still working on it.
Okay. So at the earliest possible convenience, we'll provide us with the information. Thank you. That's the expectation. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank
Can we
you.
move on? Thank you. So matters arising on page 6 and 7. Thank you, Vince.
Just on the page 6, the last paragraph about staff rolling over to the new organisation. How long does that contract carry on with the new organisation? Is it 6 months, a year, or 2 years? Just for clarity.
Are you asking that question of,
Well, we've rolled over the contracts.
are you speaking to Claire?
Oh, well, anyone that could
So-
answer.
So we
that.
can just go through the chair and perhaps Hamish could answer that.
So we're putting in place a service level agreement between the council and the Wisco. And it's intended that that service level agreement be in place for 2 years to allow the Wisco to get up and running and then make its own decisions about where it's getting its corporate services from.
We just be reminded, I think it's unfair that we.
No, just
thank you.
clarifying that.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So page 6 and 7, matters arising, 8 and 9.
On 9, going on the director appointment, so we're going to have the 3 independent directors sorted by the end of next month, so.
Well, I think it's an extraordinary meeting.
So the other 2 directors, when will we work that through?
So we're just lining up that process now to get it out, get it advertised, and get through the system.
Because just a question on it is how it's might be a bit awkward for those 2 directors to come in later. And, there's been already a lot of work done with the 3 directors are there. It makes it difficult for those other 2 directors. A lot of the policies and everything have already been done and they won't have any input.
So this is, sorry, Madam, this is very common with the setups of the Wiscos. They set up the establishment directors and then they bring the others on as over time. So set up with a very core crew, get it up and running, bring the other directors on. I mean, we're talking about the period between March and June. It's not a long period of time, and we hope to follow up quite quickly with the independent one. So my expectation is that we could have them on, by the end of April probably.
But some quite important things could get worked through in that time.
Yeah, I mean, timing is important and, we're doing, I guess we are doing the best we can to expedite the business in a timely and appropriate manner. So, but take the point on board. Chris, I'll come to you.
Through the chair to the CEO. With regards to that last statement, with 3 will be drafted to set up, and as we know, it's only 90 days between start and finish of it. Will they be setting up corporate management systems and policy at that point, or just accept, or are they going to be operational only?
So the focus will be day one operation to make sure that transitions smoothly and that customers don't see any difference. So that's the initial focus. There is some annual planning implications that the directors will be looking at, budget wise, etc. So there's a range of things that they will be doing. There are some policies that we have in draft that they may choose to implement or not. Some policies will be statutory policies that are required to implement anyway. So what we're trying to do is not overburden the Wisco with a whole lot of structure of our making. We want them to be able to create their own structure that they're comfortable with. And we'll assist, of course, if they want our assistance. This is about director accountability and then having control of the organisation and how it works and how it functions.
Okay, thank you, Chris. It's easier for you guys to see it than me. Dave, have you got a question to clarify? We're just talking about matters arising at this point though, so just might be mindful of that.
It probably isn't, might be through the chair, following on Chris's. It was just a query that I've had. What expectation of a director's time wise? Is it a day, a month, a day of what expectations have they got?
So directors are paid a director's fee, and for that fee, they do whatever they have to do to make things work. I would imagine that the setup phase, you know, through past day one, will be fairly intense for those directors. I'm not sure how long it take them, but I expect it will be relatively intensive for a period of time, and then it will tail off. A day a month is probably a little bit light, given that they'll you know have board matters to attend to, they'll have reading to do, they'll have to keep themselves up to date. So I think a day a month would be too light. I'd be expecting a bit more out of them than that.
Happy with that, Dave? Good, well done, thanks for that. And Vince, just matters arising.
On
Yeah.
the directors, who appoints the first CEO? Is it those directors or?
Yeah.
So that sort of thing will happen. That's where my point was. There's going to be some very important decisions made in that first couple of months, and there won't be two other directors there, like the CEO appointment and things like that. So, you know, we need to make sure that things are in place that you know everyone has input.
So can I just be clear, that background work is done, ready to manage that next step? You know,
Just about done.
yeah, so it's not as if we're
Not ready to push
planning.
the button today.
Yeah, so
We
okay, so I guess what I'm hearing in this matters arising question is that it's important for us as councillors to understand that, you know, some backroom work continues to be done, so we're not having a time lag because of the July 1 setup.
No.
So if we can have confidence in that, I think that's what we're asking. The questions, the tone of the questions. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Just to supplement, because the appointing of the CEO is really one of the most important jobs of the governance. You know, we sit around here, that's the person they employ, and you know, you just want the full board, the whole full board there really when you do that sort of thing.
Okay, so we'll ensure that you've heard the message, and we'll manage that in the timely and appropriate manner. Okay, thank you. Everybody happy to move on? Matters arising, page 8 and 9. 10, 11. Oh, we did 14, 15. Is there any more matters arising on those minutes? Oh, sorry, Robbie, thank you.
Just bottom of page 14, and we may not have an answer yet, but it would be interesting to know. I'd asked about the agricultural tyre collection, whether that was involved in our tonnage for recycling or not. Doesn't matter if
Okay. So perhaps if we get that on email to people, that would be helpful. Is that okay with you, Robbie?
Fine.
Yeah, perfect. Happy with that?
Yep. Sorry about that.
No worries. That's great. So that works through that set of minutes. Everybody comfortable to move on? Takes us through to page 16, which is our second set of minutes, which is our 3rd of February meeting, which is our presentation meeting. So just working through those minutes for accuracy. Has anybody picked up any matters on page 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 or 21? No matters there. So if that being the case, someone willing to move those minutes be taken as a true and accurate record? Thank you, Chris. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Fiona. All in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried, thank you. Is there any matters arising from those minutes? We've got the Biodiversity Trust. We've got James Cagle from Waka Kotahi, and this takes us to through page 21. Okay,
Chair, sorry.
Sorry.
During the meeting, I said that Canterbury was receiving only 7%. So this is page 20, 4 paragraphs down. I said that Canterbury was only receiving 7% when it should be receiving 15%. I've subsequently been told that we're only receiving 5%. And should be receiving 15%. So I did say 7%, so it's not a matter of accuracy in the reporting, but it's a bit of further information.
And I just, perhaps on the back of that, I'll come to you in a minute, Robbie. I talked with James last Thursday at Merrill Forum, and this is in regard to the speed reduction at the south end of Amberley, because there was some discussion at Road Safety Day, and Chris was in attendance, that there was quite a lot of support for it being reduced from 80 to 60 as proposed, but 80 to 50. And James said, by all means, put it in your submissions, but it is unlikely because that's kind of not the rules that they're expecting. So it's an interesting one. So by all means, don't not put it in, but it will be unlikely to achieve that. But they're working on 80 to 60 at the south end of Amberley, I think for about 250 metres to Fraser Road. So I just thought you might want to know that information. Complex world we're in, guys. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Robbie, sorry.
Yeah, page 20, second last paragraph, the last sentence from James. He encouraged councillors to look at the draft GPS, the government policy statement, for inclusion of enabling language that allows reallocation of funding of local matters. Is he saying there, just go and read it, or is he saying that there's an opportunity to submit or have a say in that? He seemed to think that was really important, and I think it was too.
There's probably much better people that can explain the complex road and allocation of funding, but it's certainly very clear. So the current government policy statement is in place. After the election, there will be there'll be a new GPS. They may or may not align. They're unlikely to align even, and but the funding that we have available is on the current GPS, so the investment portfolio or strategies, and then we get caught in our annual plan, and this is all the stuff that we've been challenged with in the past. When good faith we put our bid to say we need X amount of dollars to do this because it fits with the current funding investment, the GPS. After the election, there'll be a new GPS, and some of those funding investment portfolios might sit differently. So we're always in this sort of playing catch up or chicken and egg lever stuff. So I'm not sure whether I've described that very well at all, but is there anything that maybe Hamish and or Dan might be able to describe it better?
So the GPS is normally steady when you get a returning government. It's when you get a change of government that the GPS changes quite radically sometimes, and by the time they've had the election sorted out who's in power, and then get around to the GPS, they're about 2 weeks short or just past our ratification of our long-term plan. So the timing doesn't work. They know it doesn't work. They acknowledge it doesn't work, but that's their timing, and so that's what happens. And so you do get some big swings, and particularly the classes that are funded and how they're funded, and then if you get things like RONs coming out, it comes out of the funding. So yeah, it's
roads of national significance.
Sorry, yes, sorry. So it is quite difficult.
So the road of national significance is the
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah. So that's the example.
So Robbie, there's no easy fix to this. There's been multiple representations made to governments of various stripes saying don't do this to us, because you expect us to put these long-term plans into place, but then you just chop and change things all the time. They say, well, we have to. So and timing wise, that's just the timing.
You want to add anything from? No, it's all done. Thank you. Okay, it's a complex model, Robbie. Yeah. But that 5% was very much explored at the regional transport meeting last week. It is high on the agenda of Canterbury to be influential in that marketplace. watch this space. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Hamish. Radio councillors, let's move on. We've got page 22, which is our known forward work program. And I just circled that extraordinary meeting that we've just talked about before on the 10th of March. And anybody want to speak anything more about that? Do we know where or how or where?
I think most councils have replied, so it looks like we can proceed with that. So we're 9 AM at Waikari Hall.
Yeah.
As noted, it should be about an hour and we'll get underway. Maybe if I could just note, the 3rd of March, we've got Councillor Mackay coming, so a reminder to councillors if there's any ECAN type issues.
Yeah.
Ask them to remember.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. I know you've reminded us, and sometimes we're not so good at responding, so we do our best. But we look forward to some response in regard to that ECAN. So everyone's prepared. So is there anything else on that known work program? Right, all good on that. So in front of you is the mayoral diary. I just thought I would take a wee bit of time, if I may, just to, I know it's not indicated in the time frame, but we did have mayoral forum last week, and I just thought there was just a couple of things that I'd just like to give you some update on. So first of all, the Civil Defence Emergency Management meeting, the report from KEG, which is the Chief Executive Group, sorry, and there's looking to be some funding reinstated, I guess, for recovery work, which the funding will be found inside an ECAN budget for that. So this is just where it's at. I thought of interest to you all was a red windstorm after action review, which was instigated after the 22nd of October windstorm that was mostly affected ourselves and Kaikoura, and that is put in place to understand, lessons learned or actions that might change, or methodology or input that might change. So and for us particularly, and it came through the report, it was, roading was impacted, power, telecom, and Hammer Springs particularly have spoken about that. But from the Civil Defence Management meeting, Tom, you might be pleased to know, because I know we met with your constituent, that a letter is going to be written to cell service operators to engage, and asking them to engage with greater visibility of their network status when it goes down. So that letter will be sent to Spark, One New Zealand, and 2 Degrees. So that's an outcome from that meeting. But I just thought for all of us, you might want to understand that as well. And then later that day, we had the Regional Transport Committee. And it sort of fits on the back of Robbie's question. It's around approving sort of the strategic framework. I was pretty disappointed at the strategic framework that was put in place, because my comment to the room was that it was, in my opinion, quite urban centric. It didn't actually reflect the realities that we face. And so there is going to be some new alignment, or some new thinking around that. The office have sent back to do some further work on how that might look. And of course, as Robbie's just talked about, there will be a new GPS announced following the election. So it is about, this framework is setting the 30-year vision and objectives, targets, and investment priorities. So yeah, we'll go. And then Canterbury Mayoral Forum, some of you may have taken the opportunity to, this is information actually going forward, after every mayoral forum there will be a webinar following for half an hour to make sure councillors or councils have a greater awareness of the agenda that mayoral forum follows. And if you look on the Canterbury Mayoral Forum website, you'll get all that information. You'll see copies. There's definitely copies of the Natural Environment Bill and the Planning Bill and the Emergency Management Bill. And I'm pretty sure the Simplifying Local Government Bill will be there by now, because it was due over there for you. We had Sir Brian Roach presented. He's the Public Service Commissioner. He made a really important statement, in my opinion, because he talked about our current systems that we use were designed for a different time, and they have not evolved with data capability or people accessing information in different ways. It was cited that during COVID we were able to do things so much quicker, more efficient without the rules in place, because a lot of that was stripped away to manage process. So it was quite refreshing to hear someone in that role to speak about what our future and our strength is as local government. There is also, Canterbury Mineral Forum's also reviewing our plan for Canterbury, and it was noted that Canterbury contributes 12% of our country's GDP, 15% of the total exports come from Canterbury, totaling $15.5 million. So we're a powerhouse of the rest of the country. So we want to use that in our elevator pitch, if you like, to when we're speaking with central government to try and be influential. Big piece of work is the spatial regional plan and the Canterbury planning group. This is something that needs to be developed, I think by mid-27, that's right. So there is a term of reference going to be developed, and so I guess I'm just informing you as the work that's involved and what's happening. We had an update of the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, the progress report. We had an update on the Climate Change Partnership. We're halfway through that implementation. The regional deal proposal, the CE report update, which Hamish chairs, and we had a white paper presented, which I think was in the press in the weekend, Nick Leggett from Infrastructure New Zealand, around strengthening infrastructure across New Zealand, really connecting Canterbury and providing some key priorities. So I guess I just wanted to highlight to you the things that are on the agenda for Canterbury Mineral Forum, and the workload of the forum on behalf of us all, really. So yeah, and then actually we're on the Thursday night, we had a working dinner with the Kaiwhaka Haere, Justin Tipper, and the Deputy Tania Waiti from Ngāi Tahu. So they joined us for dinner as we continue to build and strengthen the relationship with Ngāi Tahu. So that's where that sits as well. So good stuff on behalf of the region. With that, Meryl Diary, I think if there's no questions, I'm happy to take that as read.
Just through the chair, just curiosity more than anything, on the 5th of Jan, you had a meeting with Naylor Love. Could I just ask what that might have been about? With Naylor Love. It's been up with Representatives Naylor Love, 5th of February, so it's on page 24. Just Oh, okay, sorry, here now I'm with you. I was like, hang on, what are we doing? So this Graham Earl is a resident to the Haranui district. He is a principal partner in Naylor Love, and he reached out to myself. I know his family well, and he was looking to consider from a building consultancy perspective how they might be able to support us, partner us, offer us, and so I invited Hamish to join that discussion, and we had a meeting with Graham and one of his partners, I can't remember the young man's name, anyway, another young man. And so really he just provided us some insights to the consultancy firm, I guess, of Naylor Love. He was particularly looking at, he grew up in Waikari, so he's followed with interest from an outside view, the process and the options maybe being explored for our halls in the heart of Waikari. But he had a much wider brief than that. So that was what that meeting was about. It was just a connection meeting that he initiated.
Thank you.
Do you want to add anything?
No,
No.
covered it.
Yeah, is there anything else in that you've got a question about? With that, I'm happy to move the council forward work program and the mayor's diary. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Chris. All in agreement to that, please say aye. Aye. Okay, that motion's carried. That's great. Thanks, guys. And there's no working group. So welcome, Claire. Do you want to join us at the table? This information's not a surprise to us all. We've been through these papers. We've had a look at them previously in a workshop setting to understand the intent of the policy as we, develop and progress towards our LTP. So I'm sure councillors will have looked at the policies and but if you can just sort of talk us through them, we'll take some questions, we'll get the recommendation on the table and then we'll debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As Madam Mayor says, we had a workshop on the 10th of February. We looked at the community outcomes and we looked at the rates, postponement, penalties and remission policies. And also the rates deferment in relation to drought. At that meeting, community outcomes were generally supported by those present. I note that not a large number of these policies don't have a significant number of use, but the policies which are most widely used are the QE2 covenant, the biodiversity policy about the QE2 covenant, the policy about non-contiguous land. I note that Madam Mayor's pointed out to me that I've left a bit highlighted in yellow, but it doesn't need to be in yellow. And the current internal interest rate referred to in the drought policy is now 4.92%, not a figure of 6.7% that was shown here. Questions?
Thank you, Claire. I'm going to start with Tom and then I'll go to Brett and then I'll go to Vince. So thank you, Tom.
Good morning. Sorry to sound like a scratch record. I am concerned about the penalties that we are imposing, and I know that they work and that negotiate with yourself or certainly with Jason, but it does concern me that someone who owed some rates as at the 21st of April last year would be charged 10% of the arrears, and on the 1st of July they would also be charged a further 10%, and on the 1st of January they would be charged a further 10%. So someone who owed money 21st of April last year would have had 30% penalties added to that debt. And I feel that we know that those people that owe money probably haven't got an awful lot. And then if we charge 30% in 9 months, as a result of that debt, I feel that that is a huge burden for someone who is in financial difficulties to pay. And I just have to say that that does not sit comfortably with me that we are charging 30% penalties, which is really getting up there in quite high levels. So that is my concern.
I guess have you got nothing to respond or?
Is indicated.
I've got Jason over here and looking over the top, so yeah.
Perhaps I'll leave it to Jason.
Yeah. I thought that was a really good move actually, yeah.
Certainly take a point, they are high, but the purpose of the penalties is, as I've always stated, is to provoke a reaction. That it's very easy for a ratepayer to ignore rate statements, throw them in the bin, throw their head in the sand. What we need to do is to understand what's going on so we can make plans for it. And there is plenty of scope for me to remit penalties, and I do so on a pretty regular basis, but we need to make sure we've got a payment plan in place before we remit those. Again, we just reflect the maximum that's allowed for under the Act. Underlying interest rates were a lot lower, but that's not always the case. So we just need to make sure we've got provisions for to make sure that the council is not adversely affected by people just not paying. Yeah, look, I would prefer not to charge penalties at all, but it is like I said, it's designed to provoke a reaction. And there is a cost to council of holding, having outstanding rates, because like the other ratepayers pay on time and we can do our stuff as we're required. But if we've got a group of ratepayers that aren't paying, we can't rely on that money coming in, and we need to pull down additional debt to cover our operating and capital costs at that stage. So again, we just purely reflect what the maximums are allowed in the Act, and we are no different to any other council in that respect.
You've got a further question?
Carry on. Is that okay through you, Madam Chair? Two very quick questions. Number one, if the penalties are imposed upon a client, do they have to ask for remission or a rebate of those penalties? And number two, I noticed that in your financial report, you are actually stating that our income through penalties has increased quite substantially. So, we are benefiting, or the Huronui is benefiting from these penalties, and it doesn't sit comfortably with me.
Well, they do need to request a remission of penalties. We just need to have that audit trail provided for. And yes, we are receiving penalties. Well, we are charging penalties. Whether we're actually receiving the cash is a different story. And again, but we've got that as an offset to the cost of the interest relating to the debt that we hold, because we're not receiving the full amount of rates that we specifically budgeted to.
I mean, I'm going to go Brett, but I mean, I understand the tone of your statements, Tom, but I guess the underlying responsibility that we have as councillors to inform that having a conversation with Jason in using his delegated right or to assist. And I know I've had a relatively recent example where a community member had been to Jason, but came to me, and I talked to Jason, and there's been a pathway to. So, it is, I understand what you're saying, but we are still trying to manage the situation on behalf of all of our ratepayers as well. So I'm going to move on. So thank you, Tom. Brett, and I'll come to you, Vince.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, the question is for Claire. It's just through to page 38, and in particular, the rates of permit of drought affected. My recollection was that we discussed, and I thought agreed that the word future in that first piece was going to be included in for future drought, declared drought. Is my recollection incorrect? Or I thought term future.
The term future was mentioned. This is talking about, because to have a policy about a drought that hasn't happened yet is a little bit confusing to write about. But this is a declared drought, any declared drought, so that would include a future declared drought.
I guess the other thing, Brett, is that it's not a drought that we just decide it's a bit dry. It's actually a declared drought from a higher order. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable with that?
I am. I think it's just my own confusion.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine.
Just going back to Tom's question, do we charge interest on the interest? So does it compound?
Remove interest as a phrase, it's a penalty.
Just on do we?
Yeah, so but we only charges it. So we, just to be quite clear, every missed instalment of rates is a 10% penalty just on that component of the rates, and then we charge a 10% penalty on arrears twice a year. So if the penalties are added to the arrears, there is, that penalty will be applied to the balance of the arrears at that point. So you are right, it does, but that's how debt does work. The accrued calculation of penalties or interest is on that balance.
I mean, I just come back to the statement, you know, I think what's been raised is, you know, the reality. But the important thing is that you are mindful of members of your community to ask early of them to have a conversation confidentially with Jason, because that could support or enable or manage that situation rather than that ongoing penalty reaction to. So, you know, just that's the messaging really. Are you something else, Vince?
Do we go to those people? Are we the ones that will say, hey, you're getting behind here, or do they have to come?
We regularly contact them and they receive the rates bill every quarter, and a arrears bill and a penalty letter on very regular occasions. Yeah, the problem is if people just ignore them and it doesn't sort the situation out.
Another point I see, you know, you've got note of workshop. Is there any minutes of that workshop? So, you know, we're saying in this agenda there was a workshop, but is it recorded what was said there if someone wanted to understand what we talked about at the workshop? Just because it's mentioned here. I'm just wondering, you know, if I was Joe Bloggs and I said, oh, workshop, what'd you talk about?
We don't take minutes of workshops, is my understanding. Having said that, I've got pretty detailed notes.
And this paper actually reflects the discussion. So the input that you all had, or we all had, to the policy direction as we develop and move towards LPP is here an open agenda. This is why we have it here. This is part of what's going on. Chris, did you have your hand up, or are you happy?
No, I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to Jason. Just so I can understand this better, could you recite again the penalty ratio that you've just described, just so I get it right in my notes, and then I'll give you my question.
So we strike the rates at the start of the year. We invoice once every quarter, and if a ratepayer does not pay that particular quarter, so for instance, the rates for the year were $2,000, we charge 4 invoices of $500 each. If the first instalment is not paid, we will charge 10% on that $500 that hasn't been paid. And then at the end of December, if both instalments haven't been paid, there will be the 10% added to instalment 1, 10% added to instalment 2. The balance owing at the end of December will be an amount. It will be I can't do it in my head. Be $1,000 plus the 10%. $1,100. 10% will be applied to that balance, and then the same things.
That's what I wanted to hear. So this is so through the chair, this is an accumulative cost. So the 10 on 10 on 10, it will occur over the course of time. It's not just a single bill or punishment penalty. Well, that's what he just said. So Claire's nodding, saying, no, I'm wrong.
You said it wouldn't, and
I said it would. Sorry, did I I apologise. It would be accumulative.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. What I was asking was actually was asking him to correct me so that I had it accurately in the minutes. Okay, thank you.
Right.
I'll keep my attention. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Can I just finish my question, please? I know you're excusing me already. I get it.
No, you may.
Just so I understand. And then the question I put to the room through the chair and to you, Jason, is: do you think it would be a bit more better for our ratepayers, considering myself personally has had over 200% increase in rates in less than 15 years, that we've got the aged, the retired, the ill and the elderly in our community who are struggling? I know the system's in place. To, instead of accumulating the punishment, could we not look at it, instead of it being done in 6 monthly, as a 12 monthly option, And that as opposed, because you already indicated it's 2 on top of 2 on top of the budgets. So it's not actually 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 6. So 6 penalties if you do it for the period of 12 months. So the question I have is, do you think that it can be looked at as an option as opposed to the other? I understand our debt is increasing and I know the pressure's on and I get that, but I'm also looking at the health, mental health of some of our people in those areas that I've just mentioned. Is it a possibility?
Anything's a possibility. It is ultimately your policy, councillors. I suppose the key and the absolute key, as I mentioned right at the start, is to provoke a reaction from the ratepayers. If they ignore us, do not pay the rates, it does accumulate. But if they make contact to us, as Samir mentioned, it's simple to get into a payment plan and keep to a payment plan. If there is a payment plan in place, we specifically do not charge penalties, even if there is arrears. So we try and do what we can for the ratepayers to make sure they don't get into a situation where it just snowballs and then you're paying thousands of dollars or getting charged thousands of dollars in penalties and arrears, significantly more than what the underlying rates are. But if they are able to come and have that discussion with us, we can put plans in place to avoid penalties being imposed.
Madam Chair, I just have one little supplementary just to help tidy this up. What's the best way for my constituents to approach you? Just ring?
Ring. I've got one of my team is specifically involved with debt collection, and she can deal with that directly. What we do if there's a significant amount outstanding, if we've got a payment plan in place, we need a bit of history that the payment plan is being met. Then we can remit the penalties or remit the penalties when they have repaid at the very least the underlying rates that are owed, because I don't have any discretion to remit rates, but I do have discretion to remit penalties.
I just note that it's possible to speak to any member of the rating team. It's otherwise we don't want 300 people ringing Jason.
Look, I think the other important factor is that we've had this policy in place for a number of years. There have been times when a remittance would come in public expenditure audit and risk committee if it sits outside Jason's delegation, and this council has, in my experience, always been respectful to the community or individuals within our community. So my message comes back, as I did to Tom, is that if you have an awareness that you provide that information, that we are here to listen, we are here to act on their behalf, and we will, the team will do their best to work it through to avoid the penalties that we've heard about today. So, I have confidence that the policy that is has served us well for a number of years. Still, we do need to have these systems in place, unfortunately. If everybody paid on the day before the quarter, life would be a lot easier. And your report every month would show us a different signal as well, Jason. Thank you.
One brief comment, Madam Mayor. We also need to remember that we do have some people who deliberately choose not to pay their rates as a matter of civil disobedience, really. And there is a cost to everybody, so that's the other side of it.
Thank you, Chair. I'll come back to you and then we're looking at the recommendations. Thank you.
I also note that we have this rates postponement policy, which is for people who have a particular issue that's causing them a problem. People do find themselves out of work in difficult circumstances for all sorts of reasons. So this is for those who experience extreme financial hardship, and that reduces the extent of the penalty considerably for people in that situation. So if you know someone in that situation, encourage them to have a conversation with the rating team about the options, because there's the payment options, there's the rates postponed, we don't have very many people use it because it's quite a stringent sort of a thing. But it's not just one size fits all.
Okay, thank you for that clarity and the tone of the question, because that does, I think it does reflect the concern we have for members of our community. Robbie, is that pen wanting a question, or is what's that pen doing?
I might go further.
Okay, go for your
I'm
line.
looking at the
for
officer's
reading.
recommendation
Yep.
and I believe that it's been pretty well thrashed out for this point through the workshop and through it's everything here, and I'm just wondering, are we going to deal with things as one, or break it up, or how do we see approaching the officer's recommendation?
I would be relatively comfortable having, with the question time we've had, that we look at it in its entirety. And if you're happy to move in that direction, I'd be willing to receive that. Okay, thank you. So we do have a mover for the entire recommendation as written. Are you willing to second that? Thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder for those recommendations for 1, 2 and 3 in regard to the direction. Is there anybody willing to wanting to speak for or against that motion? That being the case, I will put that motion all in agreement. Please say aye. Aye. Those against? No abstentions. That motion is carried. Thank you. Great. Thanks, Claire. Rightio, councillors, we've just got this paper in regard to Canterbury Museum draft annual plan 2027. That kind of a referral period, which is really their submission timeframe, isn't it, Jason? So perhaps you can just give us a bit of a, tell us what you want to tell us, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. This is just governed by the Canterbury Museum Trust Board Act, that they have to get agreement from the contributing councils for their referral submission period to the annual plan. So they've just requested it formally as per the extract from the director, and the period is the 13th of March through to the 24th of April. They'll be presenting on their annual plan. So if we, that's the period in which we need to make a submission if there is any components of the annual plan that we want to comment on. And generally, the other 3 councils do make submissions. We're very much a small player, as you'll appreciate this afternoon.
Okay, so you're all aware this is just the process on request of the Canterbury Museum, informing us of their submission timeframe. So if that seems relatively easy to me, we do have that recommendation that states that timeframe as of the officer's statement from the Museum Trust. So anybody willing to, thank you, Tom, are you happy? Written officer recommendation is written. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Pauline. Any further discussion on that one? All in agreement with that, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Abstention, that motion carried. Thanks, Jason. Extension of the district licensing committee tenure. Is he coming in, or what's happening here?
I've prompted him in me, but wanted to call on the hop of the.
Oh, okay, so she's coming.
Do
Do you want me to chair this, or do you want to step aside? What would
So-
be best? I'm happy to step aside.
So the district licensing committee is a committee of council,
Yeah.
and therefore, membership of the committee of council can constitute a conflict of interest.
Right.
So
So are
that's
you-
my advice to you.
Okay, so.
So you can
Yeah.
say, if you choose to, you
Yeah.
can chair it, choose not to, that's fine as well.
Yeah, okay. Look, I think just out of respect of the process, do you want to chair this part, Fiona? Just thank you. Then it makes it cleaner up for everybody, then there's no commitment. I will step aside from the rest.
I just, the officer hasn't arrived yet, so I'd wonder if just want to have go to morning tea and we can start.
Oh, morning tea. Okay. Well, there you go then. All right. What a-
Give it a time.
I was gonna vote no anyway.
It is, we will, Dave, we're going to adjourn for morning tea and we will be back in the room at 10:45. Thank you.
Good to go. Welcome back, everyone. We're just, Mia Mari has stepped aside because she's a member of the committee. And so, and Pauline has declared a conflict of interest, so we're just going to, I'm chairing now, so we'll just go through this paper.
So, hi, I'm Beth Martin, I'm the District Licensing Secretary. So if we're able just to take this one as read, is that okay? Yep. So basically we need to keep a district licensing committee at all times so that they can decide applications for alcohol licenses. Our current committee was extended later last year to sort of 21st of March this year, with the idea that we would be conducting recruitment to refresh the membership prior to that. We've just had too much workload on at the moment, so we haven't had time to do the recruitment. So what we're asking is just that we extend the current committee, hopefully to the end of the year, to give us plenty of time to do recruitment, in which case we would be able to do it prior to the end of the year. But if the other alternative is just to extend them to mid-year, because the aim is to complete recruitment in this financial period. So that's the decision that's here today. Our recommendation is to do it to the end of the year, just in case it doesn't happen.
With the intention.
With the
of all
intention that
going
it would
well.
all going well, we would really like to do it prior to the end of this financial year, but it just means it would save you having to extend again if something does happen and we don't go there.
Robbie, can I take it that the current members have been approached and they're happy with that arrangement?
Yes, they're all happy to stay on until the refresh goes through and beyond if they want to continue.
Any other questions? Somebody want?
Dave's got a question.
Dave? No? Okay, Robbie?
So with that, I'm happy to move Ross's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Chris. All those in favour?
Aye.
And against?
Thank you, Fiona. That was, so yes, isn't it really? So we now turn to page 46 in our agenda, which is the ratification of the submissions. Graham, this is your paper. We've, there again, we've had some discussion around the RMA reform, the simplifying local government and the highway speed management consultation, and I think they're all attached as written. So maybe if you just anything else to add, Graham, and then we'll look at the recommendation with Adam. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm really just presenting the submissions for ratification, so that first two, Resource Management Act reform and the simplifying local government, I think could be well traversed and have been lodged. So if the council decides it wants to make amendments or to not ratify those submissions, then there is the ability to withdraw or make. Generally, there's an ability to make amendments, but we'll just have to contact the relevant agency to process those. The third one, this speed management one's a little bit more involved in that the submission that's attached to the agenda is from the Hurunui Road Safety Coordinating Committee. As I've explained, it's not a committee of the council, even though we support it and support. And Councillor Hislop is the chair of that. So it's not about, there's no requirement for the council to ratify that, but the council may wish to endorse or indeed adopt that submission as its own submission to give weight to the submission if the council wishes to. We also noted in there that the Hurunui Youth Council is making a submission and presenting it to the Strategy and Policy meeting on the 17th of March. So the council just need to be a bit careful about how it frames its support. When the Strategy and Policy Committee, if it approves the Youth Council submission, needs to make it clear that it's endorsing that as a submission from the Youth Council. Because currently the Youth Council delegations don't allow the Youth Council to make a submission in its own name. Yeah, I can have another look at that. Possibly kind of confusing things over right now. So the decision there is really if this council wants to essentially adopt the Road Safety Coordinating Committee submission, or just not at all. It's got the option or to wait and support the Youth Council. But I understand for that submission process, it is kind of a weighted number process, so the council may wish to follow it. So I'll stop talking around there and hope to answer any questions.
Yeah, that's great, Graham. Perhaps just as we get some, if there's any questions framed up, I just wonder whether the recommendation to ratify, we should take two separate recommendations. So maybe ratify with the support of elected members, number 1 and number 2, because those submissions have been contributed to those, and then we can get some wording around the road safety one, if that makes sense to you.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so councillors, you've all read the submissions, looking at the planning bill and the national environment bill, which is appendix 1, and the simplifying local government. So perhaps if we take those two as the recommendation that we ratify those submissions, and then we address the road safety one just separately, just so we get different language around that. So you've all had input into the creating, I guess, those submissions. So I'm guessing that the tone is correct. So looking to move in a seconder, or
I'd like to make some points if I may.
yeah, do you want to make a? Do you want to? Is that in question, or do you want to make a statement after the recommendation to debate it?
I'd like to debate it.
Okay, so let's get the recommendation on the table, and then I'll ask for yours to speak in favour or of the submission. So we'll accept that, is that okay? So what I'm looking for is a mover and a seconder to number 1 and number 2 on page 26. In that case, are you happy to move, Fiona? Are you happy to second, Fred? Thank you. So we have a recommendation that we ratify the Hurunui District submission on the proposed planning bill and the national planning bill as attached on appendix 1, and the Hurunui District Council submission on simplifying local government as attached in appendix 2. We have a mover and a seconder to that. So I will I will ask now for your support to speak in favour or not of that recommendation. Or of that motion. Is that right?
I mean, yeah, that's great. So there's
Yeah,
now a motion on the table. So
Yeah, that's right. Now, thank you. Yeah, kind of got myself, but tangled up. Okay, so now I'm looking for, you can make a statement to support the recommendation as written. or otherwise, so I've worked at that motion.
Thank you.
Tom?
I do appreciate that I am a lone voice on this matter, and that and I do accept democracy works in ways that the majority are accepted, and I do accept decisions that have been taken in the past, even when I am in a minority of one. But I would just like to point out that under the RMA reform, the Planning and Natural Environment Bill, we omitted and actually removed from the original suggestion mentions of iwi and their involvement and their part of the future, and we also omitted relationships that we have built in the past. I did make the suggestion that the council has built considerable relationships with local iwi and would not like to see diminution of iwi involvement and their role in shaping key instruments. I did make that as a suggestion, but it obviously didn't receive any traction. But I did notice as well, and I did point this out in correspondence, that under the Simplifying Local Government Bill, the wording actually states reform should support and strengthen existing local and regional relationships and avoid transitional arrangements that weaken established ways of working. That's almost exactly the way I actually had worded any line to be included in the Planning Environmental Bill. I also feel that by omission, we have omitted mentions of the treaty. We have omitted all the considerable work on relationships that you yourself, Mari, Hamish, Graham Abbott, to name but just some of our staff, I'm sure many, many others have also taken part in building those relationships, and that we do have a future of cooperation and of partnership with iwi. And I think that it's important that we don't forget that. And I am disappointed, I have to say that I am disappointed that one submission goes through with that wording in that reform should support and strengthen existing local and regional relationships and avoid transitional arrangements that weaken established ways of working. I'm disappointed that that's included in one, but not in the other. And I feel that we're sending out mixed messages, I believe, and I feel that our future relationships with iwi over whether it be the Heritage Forest, whether it be the Queen Mary Trust, whether it be other developments and plans that we have in the future, I feel that we are sending out mixed messages and not showing due respect to those people who have spent considerable time and years in building relationships for the future. And I just want to know.
Thank you. Any other speaking in support of the recommendation as written? Any further comment? I will I'll put the recommendation. So all in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you. I just want to acknowledge your words, Tom. Thank you. And the intention certainly from our district is to move forward with confidence in relationship. And that is actually the, in my opinion, has an multiplying effect across our region. So your comments have been noted. Thank you. So that takes us to the second part of this recommendation, and just listening to Graham's words around supporting the endorsement of the Whanganui Road Safety Coordinating Committee submission on the Canterbury Highway Speed Management Consultation. Dave, I'm going to come to you as chair of the Road Safety Committee. You have confidence around that submission and the supporting or the submission as written?
Yeah, from the Road Safety Committee, it was all written down there. And the main reason that we supported going down to 50 was for that short amount of length of road, going down to 60, then to 50, keep it consistent. and also the potential development of a truck stop. Just slung it all down. So it was just keeping it consistent. It was a reason to go to 50 versus 60.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, you know, whilst James informed on Friday that it's unlikely, I think it's really important that we position ourselves in that manner. Dave, as chair, I think that seems like a very sensible or sound movement to make. And Claire, sorry, Chris, do you, sorry, yeah, starts with C. Anything else you want to add? You're at the road safety meeting as well to back up Dave?
Yeah, just the one comment was Trucking New Zealand, who are not always in favour of lowering speeds because they obviously got schedules and timetables to work to, but they were quite in favour of that one being lowered, so it's good to have their support on that as well.
Great, thank you. So that's good discussion. Thank you, Robbie. Have you got a question?
I absolutely agree with
Do you want to wait and speak in support of
Yes,
the,
please.
once we get the recommendation on the table?
Well, there's one comment which may affect the wording of it. There's talk there about in the cost benefit disclosure statement over the past 5 years, what's happened. It would be nice if they reflect a bit further back than that. I know my fire brigade days I attended 2 failures in that area, so that doesn't quite give a picture of how bad that area is.
I think Emma February, the road safety coordinator, has done, so that I can't qualify that, but that may be just the stats that they've got available to them. I don't know, but certainly around the table, everybody was in support, and I take your point that what you're raising is that it may not accurately reflect all of the statistical information that you might have as a volunteer in the brigade. So I take that, I understand that. Do you want to question that, ask Emma to see if there's any further stats around that?
The question was only whether or not that, to me, it didn't quite hold as much gravity as what the situation is so two fatals that I know of. It is an area that needs attention.
Yeah. I think we're on the right button to have the opportunity to get this lowered, particularly with the issues that Dave's raised, you know, increased stopping manoeuvres. So with that, Graham, I'm just going to ask you, should the recommendation say that council considers or council supports the submission of the Hurunui Road Safety just because of committee of council status? What is the best use? And then I'll ask for a recommendation.
I think if council, Councillor White's got a hand up. I think if the council, council wishes to make its own submission on the matter as well, it could adopt the road safety coordinating committee submission as it is, and so it's making this submission and noting that it's come from the committee. I guess the first bit sort of endorsing the subcommittee's submission probably isn't necessary really because it's not a subcommittee of councils. So I guess the decision is whether this council wants to adopt this one or not. Or it may wish to wait and adopt the youth council one as its own submission.
I think it'd be better to let the youth council because it's going to come to a strategy, so it'd probably be better to keep that separate in its entirety. So I think
yes, Madam Mayor, and if the council does decide to adopt this one today, then the youth council one comes forward, it'll be important to make it clear that the strategy and policy committee is supporting that as a youth council submission.
Oh, I'm comfortable with that. That's it okay with you, Paul?
Yeah, it does. I just had a
sorry, what's your question?
If I may, through the chair, to Dave. Dave, I think this is a really good submission and it's really well laid out. And thank you for that commentary around the, you know, the 80Ks to 60K versus 50. And we've heard from Madam Mayor today that, you know, there are reasons why that may or may not happen, but you were really, really clear about the reason for a potential 50 kilometre in regards to consistency, given that the area does come into a 50k area, so I just wondered if that commentary that you gave us around the 50-kilometre argument for consistency was something that the Road Safety Committee considered kind of fleshing out a little bit more in that paragraph at the top of page 64. As it stands, it just kind of says from 80 to 60 or 50, but it doesn't explain that consistency messaging that you've explained to us. I suppose it's a rhetorical question because it's
The consistency one was probably me talking about it and backed up by the three road patrol officers, police too. They sort of backed up and even enforcement. It's a nightmare when it's changing all around the place. All it does is create anxiety. So that maybe came as a reason, another reason to bring it down to the 50k. So.
I absolutely agree with that. It was interesting that that reasoning hasn't been put forth.
Yeah, although, I mean, changing road environment, you know, residential development, it just doesn't talk about the truck stop proposal. But they were the main drivers for that, you know.
I mean, I'm sure that in considering all the submissions that will be coming in, the powers will realise that potentially, if this has wholesale support, it will go from 100 to 60 to 50, which seems unusual.
I guess just looking at number 4, heavy vehicle activity and freight safety, the clean truck stop incorporated classification will change how heavy transport uses and access the area, increasing the frequency of heavy vehicle entry and exit movements. State Highway 1, it probably reinforces what you've just raised. Pauline, do you think?
I think it's a point well made in regards to supporting the 80 to 60, but I just think that point that Dave just made orally in regards to the moving it to 50, and we know that there might be some fish hooks with that because of NZTA's policies, I guess. So it's just around that point. I think that Dave made it really well, and it doesn't come through strongly. The reasoning for that 50 rather than 60.
Okay, so perhaps we could look at adopting the road safety court submission with the inclusion of increasing the reference to the shift from 100 to 60 to 50 to 60 and
60 to 50.
60 to, yeah, whatever way around. So we can get if we can increase that, that would be what I'm hearing from Pauline. Dave, are you comfortable with that? Yeah, good answer. Okay, so we'll just look at putting in a little bit more of a weight of evidence around why we would do that. Yeah, and I think Graham will pick that up.
Just supplementary to that, because I'm sure that Graham has picked it up, it would bring it in line with the speed change at the northern end as well, which does go from 100 to 50. So it makes sense to parallel that, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, good. I think that's a good point, well raised. So thank you. So we'll get that and capture that. It needs to be in by the 6th of March, I think it is. So there's time for Emma to perhaps just beef that statement up to reflect that. So.
Well, really, I think this one will be the council officer writing it as a submission from the council.
Yeah.
And we'd add that extra focus on the consistency.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess just as a matter of transparency, I probably should say that I'm submitting on a personal basis as well.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
The Southport Community Board, I also understand, is preparing a submission on this as well.
Yeah. So it's adding to that weight of numbers that is to getting the influence that we require in this instance. So Robbie.
Yeah, another board, this has come up before several years ago, and I remember having a meeting with some of the people that down there and a representative of Whakakotaki, because they were concerned about the 80k speed limit. And one of the assurances I was given was that the exit from the retirement home where it joins on was rated as a 50 km/h exit. So there might be yet be another problem that if they make it 60, we've got an exit which is designed at 50. So that might be another factor to put in there just to get consistency that coming, that we're 50 all the way through.
Yeah.
Which makes more sense to me.
Yeah, no, I think we're not poles apart here. I think we're all sort of doing the same thing, so I'm relatively comfortable with the proposal as such. So I am looking for a mover and a seconder with those, I'll call them minor amendments to that submission, please. Tom, are you happy to move that? Thank you. And seconder, whose hand did I see go up? Did I see your hand? Yeah, Andrew, thought I saw it. You're allowed to stretch your head. So I think we've got the intent of the submission and we have a mover and a seconder. Does anybody want to speak in favour of that? I'm gonna click you, Robbie, do you? You've done? Okay. Any other speaking in favour? So I'm going to put that motion. All in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Any abstentions? That motion's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Thank you, Chris, as representatives of road safety. Appreciate that, and I think we've got a good position. So well done. Great. Rightio, we have no discussion items today, so we do now take us on to our information items, which we have 6 of them today. And our first one is our financial report. So Jason, I welcome you to the table, and councillors, turn to page 65 in your agenda, and we'll work through this page by page to consider our financial status for January. So thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, yeah, financial report's in the same format as we've had up to the January 2026, and broken down into 2 parts. Again, rate arrears component, we are still trying to access the right reports to provide through the council. So it's not quite with us at the minute. But yeah, the 2 parts being the financial report and then a bit more of a breakdown of the treasury component. So financial report, again, in the same format as we've had previously. We've got page 67 is the council overall, and then broken down into the individual groups of activities. 67 from an overall point of view, for the first 7 months of the financial year, we were budgeting to receive about $40 million worth of revenue. We've actually received 43 million. So key variance there is in respect to vested asset income, that we had a significant more level of vested assets received during the year than we had budgeted for the entire year, and that representative of 2 key subdivisions in Hanmer Springs. And then total expenditure, we're expecting to spend about 43 million in operating expenditure for the first 7 months. We've expended 42 million. So yeah, they need to be dug down into the individual activities to appreciate properly. And then from a capital expenditure point of view, we do have a full budget for the year of 41 million, and we had predicted that we'd spend 26 million at this stage of the year, but we've only spent 15 million so far. And again, there's some key variances throughout the activities that we can look at individually. I'll move on to the activities. First one being water supplies, page 68. And again, I do sort of generally default to the year-to-date position. Again, we certainly getting better using our new ERP system and identifying movements during the month, but generally it's where we are for the full year to date. That is major importance, because a lot of the variances within a monthly based report are largely to do with timing and just getting that timing between the budget and the actual. But anyway, for the operating for the water supplies, overall we're down on revenue by about 200,000, and that is in the primarily in rates, and primarily relates to the fact that we receive the rates relating to the Ashley water supply from Waimakariri Area District Council, who collected on our behalf at the end of the quarter. So we're always just a little bit behind there in the March quarter. And then from an expenditure point of view, we are just down on employment costs, but there is still a piece of work that we're doing to make sure that the allocation of the employment costs is being done correctly, and it's a piece of the puzzle we haven't quite nailed yet, and it's just one of resource to apply, but it will certainly be done. So you'll see that there is some sort of compensating variances throughout the document. And operating expenditure, it is over budget by about 109,000, and then but that has compensating variances. We reported last time that our electricity costs are above budget, but it's been offset by lower than budgeted costs for water compliance, maintenance, and some staff training.
Good Chair. Question I have, development contributions, how do we assess the value of those for when they're pitched out in regards to, and that's a general overall the work, if you mind me asking.
Well, it is, development contributions are, going right back, there's a number of projects that we do that relate are required because of growth, or predominantly because of growth, like a new area or a new reserve has been desired for our community because we've got growing population and we need to, so that's fine. So to determine the development contributions, we need to determine what projects we want to fulfill and the percentage of that project that directly relates to growth, because not all projects are because of growth. Even building a new Eastern Reserve in Amberley, for instance, that's not there just for the future ratepayers, it's there for the existing ratepayers. So there is a portion of that project that we have to identify specifically relating to growth, and then the existing ratepayers need to pick up the balance of that. That's the first port of call, is determining the cost of the project, and then the next component is to identify the ratepayers that should be contributing, or those new ratepayers that should be contributing to that growth. So we do an assessment of the projected growth in the district and in particular towns, and determine from there the time frame that we need to collect those development contributions to pay for that project. And it comes down to it's just simply the cost of the project divided by the number of ratepayers, or a number of new sections or new contributors that we are we have deemed will benefit from that piece of work.
So just so I understand, I think I do understand, and that's so say we've got a piece of just use the Eastern Reserve because we could, it's got the Eastern Reserve, it costs say $1 million or whatever, I'm not going to get into that. And then you have a sort of a tagged area that you would look at and calculate that from that. So there is an actual calculation. What about for commercial investment? Does that have a different vibe as again? Or is that, if that's relative to that shadow, would that play into it as well?
It is all, I'm sure I've got the question right, commercial properties that
Just
will,
happens to fall under that shadow.
yeah, if they're within the collection area, or the catchment area is better, there will be different ways of calculating how much they pay. It's based on household unit equivalent. So and that's, you know, so a motel may not have a it might have more than a household unit equivalent, but it won't be sort of a household unit equivalent for each room of the motel. So there is a separate calculation that we do to determine the appropriate level of contributions that need to be applied. Now we do that, we do it every the assessment of development contributions every 3 years through a long-term planning process. What we do though is to set the contributions based over a 10-year life, and then just allocate and we average it out over the 10 years. So we know that over that 10-year period, based on the population projections, we're going to have 200 new ratepayers, or 200 an increase of 200 people in the district or in the township. We do calculate for each of the different townships what that means from a section point of view, because Hanmer Springs has a less population per section than Amberley does, for instance. So we have to make that calculation. So we use population projections to determine the amount of new sections will be created. We do that over in 10-year increments, but for the long-term plan, it's the first 10 years, and we just average it each year. Now, some years we have higher growth than what we predicted, and some years we don't. But it is, you know, over the 10 years, we're predicting that there will be X amount of new sections created in that township, and the calculations are based on that. So, you know, if it's 20 new sections in that township, the contribution for that component is $200. You know, we'll expect $40,000, $4,000 coming in, whatever the amount is. Shouldn't try and do calculations on my head without my calculator in front of me. But, so it is. It certainly can be a little hit and miss, depending on, because the last financial year we had virtually no significant development, but already this year we've had two major developments occur in Hanmer Springs that have bolstered the DCs.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Certainly development contributions will be a component that we'll spend a bit of time with when we're doing the next long-term plan, which isn't that far away according to Claire.
New legislation's putting
Absolutely, yeah, that is another component that we need to come to grips with.
Right, through the chair, if I could just apologise because you went through it before and I couldn't stop you. Wasn't want to interrupt you. If we go back to page 67 and down to capital expenditure, it's actually like roads and footpaths. And if I could just before that refer to the employment cost difference, and there's a reference here saying that there's a review required into the allocation of those costs, which talks about that discrepancy there. But with the roads and footpaths, is that a timing issue? I mean, the variance is quite large, you know, year to date in January.
It is a timing variance, but also there is there are some things that we've included in the budget that we may not end up doing, but it's all either rate or debt or subsidy funded. So but generally for the roading, it is a timing that there is work and it is part of the process that we haven't quite grappled with, is getting the calendarisation of their capital program right, I'm not even saying perfect, even better than what it currently is, because Focus has been trying to get financial, visibility of the financial reports before those components. But generally with roading, it is very much a timing. We've got X amount of funding from NZTA, and we know we can always spend that, so we do make sure. But there can be a bit of a trade-off between what's considered to be maintenance and what's considered to be renewal. So we may have an overspend in the operating expenditure, but an underspend in the capital expenditure, and that is the difference between the two is there's not, there's a very small margin which side of the fence it sits. It's quite clear from an accountant's point of view, but from an engineer's point of view, it's quite different. So yeah, and the accountant's point of view is the correct one, but we just need to move that one through.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve, you've got a question?
Yes, through the chair, just one observation there, and I appreciate your comment about the accountant's point of view. So if I could just draw your attention to council overheads on page 67, in the very end column year-to-date period, I think you've got 6 there. Is that not fine? Is that fine? You've got 6 in the council year-to-date variance on that. Should it not be 5? Or have I misread that?
No, the variance of 6 is just rounding variances. But the total overhead is 6 million, which is the components of the overhead. And again, it will be a discussion point. In your planning budgets, just to identify what are true overheads and how we allocate it across the organisation, because overheads in themselves are just providing services to all the other components of the council, but we don't actually strike a rate to cover our overheads. We strike a rate on the components that we provide the service to, and it will be, and it certainly is going to be a discussion point, because there is a component of those overheads that are applied to Three Waters that we do need to address. That may or may not be paid for by the WISCO in the future. So just put a pin in that, because it is a detailed discussion we do need to have.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Jason. Do you have a follow-up question?
I do actually, it's just an actually question. I just see consistently through your words, CAPEX to improve levels of service. I mean, having one who writes CAPEX onto military plans and operation, could you just clarify that for me? I bet it's something simple that I just don't quite understand.
And again, it goes back to that specific requirements, CAPEX on the new
Well, this is here we go.
And capital expenditure, it's a requirement under the financial regulations attached to the Local Government Act. In our funding impact statements, we need to identify a capital expenditure that relates to growth, relates to improved levels of service, or relates to simple renewal of those assets. And again, like the discussion around OPEX and CAPEX for roading, the discussion around the difference between all three of them can be quite marginal. Generally, renewals is just replacing what we've got there with exactly the same thing. Pipes in the ground, for instance, we generally just replace them like for like, but not always. Sometimes we replace them with better quality or more appropriate pipes. Like post-earthquake, we replaced AC asbestos cement pipes with high-density polyethylene, which is much more resilient. So that was, even though it was just replacing those assets, it was actually providing a better level of service because we had more shapes. It was going to survive. And then And again, replacing a pipe can be, can be renewals, could be improved levels of service, or it could be providing additional capacity due to growth. And so instead of replacing that size pipe, we're replacing it with that size to provide greater capacity. So it is a bit of a balancing act where it actually sits. And again, we just required under legislation to put it in those three categories.
Thank you.
But
just to comment on that, I mean, a replacement pipe could fall into all three categories. So if you're replacing an old pipe that's due for replacement and it's not good material, you replace it with a superior material and you make it bigger. So you improve the level of service, you cater for growth, and you've done a renewal. So it gets pretty arbitrary.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand what it meant. Now it makes clear sense.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and so we do it from a but on pages 79 through to 78, 79 is the actual capital expenditure projects that we undertake to provide a great deal more detail.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Water supply?
Yeah.
Sewer is quite a similar sort of discussion to water. The invested assets are higher than what we budgeted for, and expenditure generally is lower than what we budgeted for to date. There's Sheryl's provided in their comments here, direct expenditures under budget. Almost all the aspects of maintenance and operations are lower than what we had in the budget. And again, that budget is largely just split up a 12 per month rather than trying to seasonalise it at this stage to doing a lot more maintenance work in sort of the February, March, April period, which is a greater level of construction happens over that period. And similarly with the capital expenditure, it's just a reference back to the capital expenditure report. Stormwater. 70. You can see that pretty much the amount of rates we have predicted. Invested asset income is higher because the types of assets that would be handed over to council from those subdivisions is quite a large amount sitting in stormwater, sort of retention ponds and any infrastructure relating to those. And operating expenditure generally is lower than what we've budgeted for as well. And again, the same things, and that comes down to timing of spraying of stormwater drains and the likes. Page 71, roading. Large variance in the capital expenditure, but it is very much a timing variance, particularly the seasonality of doing those key projects generally in this period. And again, as we get a bit better in budgeting, those sort of seasonalities will be just built into the reports properly.
Thank you.
Okay. 72, page 72, climate adaptation variance, which will be a variance. This will be a permanent variance. In the budget, we have allowed for sales of property and sales of sections relating to Mount Beach, and that process just hasn't progressed. So we've got the budget to do the significant amount of the capital works. That hasn't progressed, so we don't have sections that we're going to sell. So there, again, it was in the budget. It's just the fact that the budget they won't proceed, and as I've been doing the forecast for the remainder of this financial year, so putting that as zero, we're not going to receive any funds for the sale of those sections, certainly in this year, and obviously until the work is actually completed.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, around that, I wondered around you know, we're getting ahead of ourselves, and I also wondered around the signalling that we're getting around that. I thought that we're selling something which maybe we were off. Yeah, so I wondered at what stage do we start to consider it in the budgets? It seems to me that we're ahead of ourselves there.
Yeah, and you know, certainly in March, I've got a workshop plan to go through the budgets, particularly the district-wide budgets, this is one of them, and you know it will reflect what we've allowed for in the long-term plan, but and in the long-term plan we had allowed for the development of those sections in year 1, sale in half of them in year 2 and half of them in year 3. They may all be pushed into year 4 or 5, depending on the desire to progress or the ability to progress, given that part of that was needing to reclassify some reserved land, and it's not a quick process.
So we'll get another chance to have a bit of some input into that in the you know, what's in the future, what's around the corner process. And
that's correct. And there will be some key projects that we allowed for in the long-term plan that are allowed for in year 3 that we know are going to need to be pushed out. So we just, you know, again, put in that, you know, put it at 0 for this year, but knowing that it is something that we need to address as part of the long-term planning.
Thank you.
Public services on page 73, and this wide range of things that make up public services. But the key variances have been identified there. We've received under grants and subsidies, we've received a range of different grants than we had allowed for in the budget. And again, the nature of those grants, particularly with the community-led development team, they are applying for grants all the time to meet certain programs that we don't think of even 12 months ago when we were doing the budget. So we're always sort of a wee bit behind on that. Other income, the variances have been identified there. Fees from the transfer station sit in there. They've been significantly higher than what we had allowed from the budget. And other more minor things like forestry royalties we've received, and that was for the unexpected milling of the Balmoral ground area. And vested assets development contributions, both above budget and again directly relating to and then expenditure, we're down on budget, and again number 5 around the employment costs. It's just making sure that we are allocating the costs, the base costs appropriately through to the right.
Maybe can I just say at this point, the grants, the MPI and the DIA grant, $25,000 each, you know, it was probably a little bit slow coming in, but Chris and Dave were probably getting one a week or, you know, something like that. So, you know, those 2 funds will probably be expired, or the likelihood of there will be expired over within this, the MPI funding has a 6-month life, and if that funding is not considered in that time frame, it will be returned. So, you know, but it's a much tighter criteria. You agree with that, Chris and Dave? And so I guess it's just for information for everybody.
Okay, many things, none of those were budgeted, so they're
No.
always gonna be a little,
Exactly, yeah. Cool, very good.
Regulatory services here, we're down on revenue, both through the building consents and alcohol licensing fees, and largely, we're hoping that is timing. And expenditure wise, key thing, we do have some costs relating to plan changes that we will then on charge to the applicants. But they sit in as part of the expenditure until. Okay. Thermal calls on page 65. Year to date, recorded an operating surplus of 2.2 million for the period. We were, for the first 7 months, we were looking at so 2.3 million, so about $150,000 down on the profit budget that we were budgeting for, but certainly, I suppose, better than some of the earlier forecasts we had.
Thank you.
Corporate. So the variance is highlighted there, and it was highlighted earlier that our rate penalties are ahead of budget. Charging of the rate penalties are ahead of budget. Actual cash in the bank may not be the same, and a few other variances there, including cost recoveries relating to the election, which we received from Canterbury and licensing costs. We used to receive it from the DHB as well, but they no longer have those elections. And then the operating expenditure is we're over budget in a few areas. And again, the employment costs were over budget, but there is an increase here, but lots of decreases in other areas. So it's just making sure that they are allocated correctly. And we're over budget, and again, it is largely timing relating to things like software licenses and the likes, which we have budgeted spread across the year, but at one point.
Sorry, Jason, I've just got a question here from Tom.
Tom?
Two quick ones, if I may, page 76. On the number one, rates for the year is higher by 137,000, attributable to more rateable properties than forecast. That was quite a nice surprise that we suddenly found that we had more properties than we actually. I thought that was unusual.
Yeah. Well, it's not unusual, and it comes again. Another war story here. Sorry, Chris. The problem we have is that we have to determine when we set our annual plan at the end of each June what we have to predict how many rating units we will have, how big the capital value is to apply to the expenditure that we need to recover. We don't always get that right, and more often than not, our growth projections have been lower than what has been the reality, and that's just means we receive more rates than we predicted, and overall, it won't be overall at this stage. When you take everything into account, we're only about $1,500 altogether above our rating budget for the rates. Granted that there is the rates to the actually water supply consumers that are collected by Waimak district on our behalf. So overall, we're not hugely over, and that perhaps just represents that. Yeah, it's always sort of crossing your fingers, hoping we'll get that level of growth, and generally we have. But if we don't, it means we're going to receive less money than what we had predicted, which is a more difficult process. And yeah, it doesn't always move. The increase in the number of properties isn't always linear to each community. Some actually reduce in size, but some are, particularly Amberley area and in Hampton Springs will be higher than what we had budgeted for. That there was a Councillor Bruton about that earlier. An example is that we have a $64 rate relating to the repayment of the debt for the Amberley swimming pool. Now, we had predicted that that would be collected from X amount of ratepayers. In fact, it's X amount plus, and that means that that debt gets, we get more capital rate, which is going directly into repaying that debt quicker. And generally that is the case. We try to, we're just trying to, we have to make you understand, this is the total cost we've got. These are the ratepayers that we can collect it from. And if we get more ratepayers, doesn't mean more rates, it's just we can spread the rating burden wider. So Joe ratepayer doesn't, doesn't get significant increases if we've got more ratepayers to carry that burden.
And that's one question. I'm going to see one.
I might have over-explained.
Yeah, I think you knew the second one might be more difficult. No. Item on note number 6, you have there the Datascape software project is unbudgeted. And I felt that we've known about Datascape for months. So how can the expenditure be unbudgeted? Sorry, and you don't have to answer me now if you'd rather come back.
I need to dig a bit deeper. I think there is some. I think.
So if you recall, when we came to you with a proposal for Datascape, the budget was already in place, and we said we're not going to do these things so that we can do Datascape. So technically, Jason's right; it's unbudgeted because council has approved that we change things around, and some of the things we're going to do, we're not going to do in order to fit Datascape into the system. So technically, it's unbudgeted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I understand your intent.
And again, that relates back to the long-term plan. When we come to the long-term plan, they're through the implementation, so hopefully we can forget about that. But it does. We've got a essentially a sheet to start. Okay, the last page there is earthquake recovery, and again, just the same discussion as a moment ago around the level of rates for the earthquake recovery, collecting X amount per ratepayer, and that is we've got more ratepayers. It's getting rid of that debt that we incurred from recovering from the earthquake. Okay, and then page 78 through to 80, individual projects that we're undertaking. So Datascape implementation is there. Some of that is carryovers from the previous year. So the total capital projects actual to date of 15.28. Actually, so 15.28 million. So that's good.
It's just something that I noticed, and Vince might be able to answer as much as you, Jason, but on page 79 under reserves, It's got Demet Reserve toilet insurance claim.
Yes.
Where are the toilets in Demet
That's
Reserve?
been
Or is
sort
it-
of, yeah, that's sort of.
Oh, okay, so,
The toilets at the
the Hiranui.
Hiranui Bridge were hit by a truck and certainly agreed with the cost which we had pursued with the truck company's insurance.
So I guess, do we call that the Demet Reserve, is my
No,
question?
and that sort of an error,
Okay.
yeah, there's, yeah, it
So
just
I
needs,
understand the toilets and the truck hitting it, but it was the classification that I.
yeah, no, it should sit under public toilets. One of the peculiarities around Datascape is having needing to name each project and it doesn't necessarily to expect the public toilets, but to be able to analyse it, we need to go down another level and it's not directly linked, so
Right, okay.
it's just getting the phrasing correct and making sure it's sitting in the right area, so we identified that at Cheviot the other
Right,
night.
okay, that's cool, happy, thank you. What, I've got a couple of questions, Robbie, Ewing, and maybe Chris, is that your pen? Yep, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Robbie.
Pages 78, 79 and 80. What a board member interesting. Is there any way we could perhaps turn them around, put them on A3 to save me looking for reports?
Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Robbie.
Without a roller ruler and a spotlight, it's pretty hard to follow.
I thought I always printed them in A3 myself. Yes, that will be something I'll discuss with the government supervisor.
Okay. Yes, yes is the short answer. Yeah, Chris, you've got a question?
Yeah, just a question. I noticed in the capital expenditure program there's a few items there I'd just like to clarify. I see we're buying heat pumps for this, or what location would these sorts of things be for?
Right, I know we've got lots of heat pumps around in the medical centres and halls and the lights. I need to dig down and see exactly which.
Don't stress it. So this is going into our amenity building from Chief Operating Officer.
But the mayor, they go mainly for our social housing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, good answer.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
We, and I suppose this report perhaps do need to sort of always have another column, just what activity it relates to, so.
That would be helpful.
I will, discuss it.
Yeah. Right, okay, we've got some good actions as far as that report goes, so thank you. Yeah. Jason, happy that you carry on. Maybe
Okay,
future.
so that's the financial report. The next component is the treasury account. Page 82 and 83. Key components of the treasury dashboard, just showing where we currently are. As at the end of January, we had external debt amounting to 97.5 million. Bearing in mind that our annual plan had predicted we would be approximately 110 million by the end of the financial year. The purpose of the dashboard is just to highlight making sure that we are compliant with their treasury policy in all respects. So, and that is the case for all the various limits that we have in place. A key component of the dashboard is the identification of the all-up weighted cost of funds, including margin, which just sits as one line item on page 83. It's sitting at 3.86%, and that's actually down from the 3.92 at the end of December. And that essentially is the cost of debt, with all the other hedging and fixed rate components.
Yes, I see that Mr. Westpac fallen off the pie chart there. Is that a timing thing or is that something being replaced? The composition of counterparties.
It's just at the moment, we've got all of our debts with the local government funding agency. We do have a $10 million facility with Westpac, which is there for largely for liquidity purposes, but we do tap into it every now and then. But I do that sparingly because the cost it costs us 3-5% per annum to have that facility in place, but we are required to have, and it's part of our need to meet with the local government funding agency that we always need to have liquidity of 110%. So total facilities in place compared to the amount of debt that we do have needs to be, we need to have 10% more, and that is largely needed to meet emergencies. So we have that facility in place. Yeah, it costs us $10 million. It costs us $35,000 per annum to have that facility there. And then when we do borrow from it, it is more expensive than the LGFA debt because LGFA short-term debt only costs.
We've lost as to why it's not on that bar chart, on that pie chart.
Because it's a facility, it's not drawn down.
When it's been on.
When we draw it down, we'll get a little red bit on the chart, on the donut. Yeah, so 2 or 3 years ago, we used to always have some drawn funds at Westpac because there was no LGFA short-term funding available. And it would be 3 years ago, Jason, when LGFA.
Yeah, it's been a while now, yeah.
And so because the LGFA funding is cheaper than the Westpac funding, we try and utilise that to the maximum, and just keep the Westpac funding there. Right,
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Jason, can you stay on?
So the rest of the report is just page 85 is a full listing of our debt at the end of January. We do there's a line item there of $5 million that matured on the 20th of February, and that was last Friday. We simply replaced that with long-term debt because we know that it will be core debt moving forward. We do have a range of our tranches of debt that actually mature in April. We've got approximately 14 million that matures in April, and yeah, we just need to. We don't have the cash to repay them, so they need to be rolled over. But and that's part of the work that our Treasury does. It's the most appropriate maturity dates moving forward.
I mean, we understand you have to roll them over. Are we going to float these, or are we going to fix them, or what do you do, or is it a combination of both?
It can be a combination of both. Most likely they will be floating with the fixing component occurring through the interest rate swap process. But so we fix a portion of our debt through either fixed rate loans, which we've got a group of them at, or through the interest rate swaps.
Okay.
I suppose we're certainly mindful in the next 4.5 months that a chunk of that debt and a chunk of the interest rate swaps will actually transfer across to the service CCO. So it's just managing, making sure we're doing the right thing to ease the novation of those debt and the derivatives.
That leads to another question, unintended actually. It just suddenly popped up between these fuzzy eyes. the question would be that if we, once we've done that, how will that affect our equity and our loan gearing in the future? How will it?
It will, well, the key thing is the Wisco will have key covenants it needs to meet for the LGFA, because they're gonna be the key funders. It's different to what council will have, so in rough terms, and again, you'll see the result of that in the budgets for the 26-27 annual plan, because everything's transferring on the 1st of July, so it fits into, we're likely to have council debt level of only about 30 million at the end of June 27, just very, very rough numbers at this stage. With the Wisco taking on the $80 million of debt relating to Three Waters. So it does change the dynamics quite considerably. It will necessitate us to review our treasury policy, which is in train. It's just there's so many things going on at one go, and require us to because currently the treasury policy allows us to borrow up to 175% of our total revenue. We just won't need that moving forward, and we can certainly scale that back. It may only be 50% or 70% rather than 175%, which is the maximum we're allowed to do under the local government.
The liquidity ratio cap will be reduced, honestly, won't it?
The what, sorry?
The liquidity ratio cap will be heavily reduced.
That
or the percentage stay the same.
The percentage will need to stay the same, because that is a requirement of the LGFA, but we can reduce that if we've only got $30 million of debt. Yes. And I need a 10% liquidity. Yes. I can reduce that or reduce that facility down to 3 or 4 million. Yeah. And we'll lose a portion of that fixed cost. With regards to the Wisco, it will have a different requirement for liquidity, most likely be lower than the 110, because the covenants relating to the Wisco are different to the covenants relating to council, just because of the nature of that entity. It is more akin to a utilities company than a local. The covenants need to reflect.
Thank you.
A couple of other questions here, but Vince and then Robbie.
So when the debt gets transferred into this new company, then still the liability comes back to council, doesn't it? So when the borrowing money, doesn't matter which entity it is, there's a limit. So it will still affect council. What this other group's doing will affect us. And what our borrowing can be, and what their borrowing can be.
I've got a Tuesday where I'm handballed the guarantee arrangements to discuss with staff.
It was quite interesting. I heard a podcast from the chair of the local government borrowing, and he was speaking about that. It was quite good insights, because he said we'll be looking as a bank at both entities. If we're borrowing money to one, we'll be looking at the others. So it all relates through, so we've got to remember that. It doesn't like, oh good, we've got rid of that, we can just go and spend up large, because we won't, or they won't be able to spend up large.
So what Vince is raising, you'll be covering off in a workshop next week. To tease that out and help us understand things.
And to explain what the guarantee arrangements for both councils are in respect to the
Okay.
And again, just preempting that, because we're bringing the vast majority of the debt the way we've got it structured, more, that will be responsible for the vast majority of the debt.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, as we've sort of journeyed towards this process and July 1, that it's always been a concern, I suppose is the correct word, you know, of this council, that actually at the end of the day, the reliance still sits on, you know, mum and dad rate card, or it's not a magical fix and it's gone. We're still, and I think that has been a theme that has been challenged all the way along as we work through these processes. So I think that workshop next week to help us understand the implications of that, and I guess the disciplines that will need to arise from it as well. So that's next week. Oh, it's not next week. Is it on the 17th? Okay, well, we'll get it confirmed and sent out. But there'll be, I guess the question that's been raised is, you know, it's not, that we're not completely removed from these processes, that we need to totally understand, and there'll be an opportunity for us to understand better, and I think that's the theme of your question. Robbie has got a question, and then we'll see if we can move on with this report, so thank you.
With rates capping, just wanted to see the consequence of it perhaps. Do you see the government moving to cap or change the parameters of our loan to avoid the risk of councils shifting a big chunk of debt over to Wisco, and then using, if they're struggling along, using their extra headroom in their loaning capacity to make up for not getting enough rates? And they might see some controls come around just how much we're allowed to loan, as well as what we can pay.
Stay off my soapbox on that one for the time being, but use direct.
Okay.
I'm the game tomorrow.
Thank you, Jason. Do you want to take us through these rate swaps and the CR stuff, and then we'll look at closing off your report?
Yeah, just there for
information. Oh, sorry, Pauline.
Oh, yes, sorry, I might be getting ahead of myself, but anyway. We haven't had a rates arrears report since the July agenda last year, which suggests it's not Datascape related. So is there a reason for that?
Sorry, it is.
It is Datascape, because we had one in July.
The right information at the end of each month. So yeah, we just and that is not a Datascape issue per se. So it's a trading issue that we've got to make sure that we do obtain that information. So, but we do, I think I mentioned it and stuff. We're still trying to find the right report that replicates what we previously had, which was easy to follow. It doesn't always translate between the old system and the new system. So we perhaps not replicating what we previously had, understanding what we've got and how it provides the correct information that I've previously provided. So,
thank you, Ray's relevant point, Pauline. It actually provided a lot of information to help us understand, and if we reflect back to the policy statements this morning, it probably helps us understand where some of those penalties sit, or the volume of those penalties, I guess, and that may be what you've been.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess, because I mean, I fully respect that discussion that we had this morning and the points raised by Tom and Chris in regards to rates, and I think part of that narrative is us having that overview of, how many properties are owing, how many are have paid in advance, and at what amounts, and then what the outstanding amounts are, and how that overall, that picture was just really helpful to go, okay, if we've got $2 million of outstanding rates, that's a massive impact on our business as usual.
And I guess too, what you're raising, Pauline, is actually by comparison, what was it last year? Was it only
Yeah.
1.8 and now
Yeah,
it's 2?
yeah, yeah. What's the
where's the
pattern?
trends?
Yeah.
That's right. So we'll leave that with Jason and in the context of this report. So thank you. Brett?
Can I just really quick, I'm conscious of just through the chair, could I ask, when we talk about the extra headroom that we may inherit when the assets get moved to New Wisco, our borrowing is based on our ability to rate. Yeah. And so that's income. So the income we're going to lose off water that we can't charge for that. That headway that we're talking about isn't going to be.
No, that's right.
So do you know comparatively how much less that will be? Even though we'll all of a sudden end up with
There'll be about $13 million water rates that won't be coming into this
so that
organisation.
lessens our ability to.
So our total ability to borrow at 175% will drop from about 115 million down to about 90 million. But we'll have debt of 30 million. So we need to reset our treasury policy, as Jay said before, away from the 175 and get it down to something much more realistic.
I think that I just wanted
like 40% or something.
Thank you.
And that treasury policy will always have the default that the LGFA requires, and it's still going to be 175% regardless. And for a number of years, we've had what I've always called a soft cap. Maybe it was 100% or 125%. But given the trajectory of our debt, we've moved it to the default for the LGFA. But yeah, that debt moving to a new entity completely changes the dynamic.
At the moment, as I said, scrape close to that 175 at the moment. Once the debt, although it's still debt owed by the people in this district, but that debt passes to the new entity, then will be somewhere around that 30% mark. As council, close to 485, somewhere around there.
All right. Happy with that, Brett?
Yeah.
Okay, good as. So, Emmett, have you completed all your reporting?
I think so.
Good as.
And nothing
Okay. So, councillor, we do have.
Just on the dumb question, that on our swaps, how long do we keep doing this if we're banking with the local government? Let's just keep going. How do you get out of them?
The swaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm not a corporate banker.
And it does come back to the requirements of each treasury policy. So the Wisco will have its own treasury policy that will require a certain portion of the debt to be fixed. And if there is, if the predominant debt that they pull down is floating debt, we need to have interest rate swaps to create that fixed component to it. So, and there is always, we can take out fixed rate bonds from the LGFA. We've had some very cheap ones in the past that disappeared all too quickly, and other ones that it's just how it comes down to the amount of risk that you want to take on the underlying interest rates. So we, as a council, generally a little more risk averse to make sure we've got a certain amount that is fixed, to make sure we've got some certainty about the amount of interest that we're paying. But we could completely ride bareback and have no hedging whatsoever, and it's great when the interest rates are low. It's awful when the interest rates are high, and that's why the majority of us have had fixed components of our mortgages over the county.
I think what Vincent's trying to ask, if you bear with me, is there anywhere in our present policy to gear down the loan as it stands after we've done the Wisco, reduce this 30 million down? Is there any indications? I think that's what Vince was trying to say. Yeah, that's right. No, I understand where you were heading totally, but I think that's what Vince was trying to say.
Yeah, there is, we either, I mean, it's how, how we want to repay that debt. You know, do we increase the rates to pay that debt, but we've got other factors that are stopping us doing that, or we stop doing things?
So I think it's fair to say that we've got fairly aggressive debt repayment timelines on our projects, on a lot of our projects, Jace. I mean, we brought a lot of our debt repayment down into 10-year windows, and some of those have slid out a bit again now. But you know, for a long-term assets, a 10-year window for debt repayment is pretty aggressive. And if we stop spending capital and we continue repaying the debt on those things at the current sort of rates, we'd be relatively clear of debt in 10 years.
That was something that would probably come to the council for discussion and direction at some point if it was into the table.
And certainly the long-term plan is exactly that forum for that. Where do we want to be in 10 years? And I do that specifically with each of the community committees. This is where we're currently at. These are the things that we want to do during the year, during the 10 years. What position do you want to be at the end of 10 years? And if we want to be debt free, right, to get there, we have to increase the rates by that level. If we're comfortable with
unfortunately decrease something else.
Yeah,
that's right. That's the devil in it.
That's the only lever you've got.
That's the only two you've got.
Exactly.
That discussion with those committees relatively focused on their areas, but it's the same with council. If you want to be debt free, but you still want to do all these projects and you don't want to put the rates up, you have to go and pluck it from the money tree out the back, which has been
a few years ago.
There's not many peers left on.
Okay, so I guess the intent of this discussion is that there will be an opportunity for us to kind of tease out that policy as we, develop our long-term planning cycle of how we manage this profile. Okay, all right, so we've had a good look at the financial report as we would expect to do, and there's some good relevant things come from there. But we do have the recommendation that we received that paper. Is someone willing to do so, please? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tom. Moving the seconder. If there's no further questions, all in agreement to that, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Abstention, that motion's carried. Thanks, Jason, appreciate that. It's 12:14, and so I think we'll probably try and get through these reports before we break for lunch, bearing in mind we've got guests coming in at 1 o'clock. So if we can get through this, I might ask if you would move us into public excluded so that we can come back in after lunch. Yeah, okay. So we've got our monthly report on the Boimo request. You're all pretty familiar with those now. There's a few there today, but you just want to give us a bit of an update on what some of them might mean and maybe some questions around that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, just a standard report. I want to note that we've got a couple that we've requested extension for. Mostly because the finance team is under a bit of workload pressure. And so there've been a couple of quite big ones, the Taxpayers Union rate payers report, quite wide ranging, and similarly the Federated Farmers one. So we just requested a bit of time for those. There are some of those ones in progress that do require quite a bit of work. So this current crop, some quite chunky ones, except for a couple of them which were quite strict. I'm just happy to take questions.
Thank you, Graham, for that. Is there any questions in regard to specifics? I've got Tom and Crystal. I'll go to both of you first and see where we get to.
Yeah, I was just
the statement, the council doesn't have any detailed information about artworks that it owns. I wondered, that might be a slight omission, we could actually be sitting on something that was particularly valuable and not realise it. And also, if we did have some valuable works of art, if we don't know about it, then they're not insured as well. Would that be correct?
Well, I mean, we've had this request quite a few times now.
Right.
Our response has always been the same. We've got some 2 or 3, 4 or 5 significant bits of artwork that we do identify, but it's not specifically valued. And that's things like the Bonama Demonstrative Falls and the statues out here. What we tell the taxpayers union is we've actually got a lot of art in our various libraries and services. But we've never been through the process of valuing it or working out where it's actually come from. A lot of it would be gifted by people, by the members of the community. So we define that information with quite a major undertaking. But in terms of your insurance question, it's probably something that the CFO would have to answer in terms of what the insurance authorities are. Not
Thought you'd done.
But these are the artworks that we haven't valued.
Yeah, we do have, we do in our material damage policy, we do have a catch-all for monuments, for instance, that they were hit by a car, for instance. So there is, apart from obviously trying to get it out of the driver, we've got that policy for that. Material damage policy for that. Yeah, I don't think we've specifically got any specific cover for artworks, and we're not, if we don't have them specified in our policy, and because we don't naturally value them on a regular basis, they're not there. And I suppose it comes down to the amount of work required to get them valued and specified, and the specific premiums on that. What is the level of risk? I missed my question, so I'm spitballing what the answer should be.
Oh, that's fine.
Thanks, Tom. Chris, I think, and then Robbie.
I was actually a similar question about it, but I can throw some light on it, having had to deal with this just recently for a family collection. Each piece of individual art has to be categorised, it has to be photographed and proven and valued, and it is quite a costly and long-term process. The other part I was going to ask was, are we able to ask what was the motivation of the taxpayers union requesting such a thing? That was my request, actually.
We never, or we don't question why people have asked for information, we just provide it. But as I said, they've asked this one many times. They ask us a wide range of stuff, so I presume other councils probably do have art collections that aren't fairly, and I'm aware there's been some publicised cases of certain councils having quite valuable pieces of art. So I guess, yeah, they might, the taxpayers union might have a particular view on whether council should hold pieces of art.
I was just going to ask, was the start point for the item number 10? Questions, was it back? Because an awful lot of discussion workshop would have involved
Madam Mayor, this
itself.
This is specifically the workshop that was held recently in February. Okay.
It's not the way that we.
No, this is just specifically that workshop. I've requested all the information all about that.
Okay. Any other questions? See that information, so thank you, Tom. Fiona, all in agreement, receive that, please say aye. Aye. Against, that motion is carried, thank you. Hamish, this is your report on monthly performance report.
Thank you, Madam
Couple of
Mayor.
reads, yep.
Yeah, a couple of reads. So urgent fault resolution, not meeting the meeting hours there in January. That's largely due to scheduling staffing over Christmas break. So that's that one. We got agonisingly close on a recycling percentage, 30% when the target's more than 31, so crept up a bit, but still seeing relatively low volumes of recycling in comparison, or high volumes of waste in comparison. So that's there. And that's us for a month. That's what we got with other times.
Okay.
So we have a question about filings, chief operations officer. Are not included.
So that was Robbie's question earlier, is that what we're talking about?
Ties and agriculture.
Egg recovery, Dan, is the egg recovery stuff counted?
Those ties will probably get you that extra 1%.
Easily.
Yeah, I guess so. These are standards that that are compared nationally, so we need to make sure that we're consistent with what other people do. They're not count ties, and we should be count ties.
Cheating. Okay, any other questions? Anyone willing to move? Move. Thank you. We have a seconder, Steve, that we receive the monthly performance report. All in agreement to that, please say aye. Against, that's carried, thank you. As we noted earlier, so we've got the Hammond Springs Thermal Pools and Spa. If any committee member wishes to speak to that, but I think other than that, we could take that report as read. You happy to do that? Yeah, happy to move that we received that information. Thank you, Brett. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Chris. All in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? That motion's carried, thank you, and we will get a more fulsome report, of course, next time from Sarah. Thank you. Tom, I'm going to flick to you to the Huronui Tourism Board update. A couple of good pages of activity there, so maybe if you just want to talk to some key points.
I think the Waipara train is really exciting, and I think that's fantastic. And Hamish is catching that train from Christchurch to come back, aren't you? Just to be on that train, it must have been, I was tempted as well. Yeah, advertising campaigns and Huronui is certainly on the radar as far as much of the publicity is concerned, and I certainly think that Sarah at the pools has done a marvellous job in getting the Huronui and getting Hammer publicised in our recent problems and downturn of economies and windstorms. So I think she's done a really good job there. I think that the Alpine Pacific Triangle is something that will be really interesting to see longer term as we sort of encourage that as a tourist route. And that's about it really. There's not much else we can say.
Well done. Yeah.
There's not a lot to add there. It's already well written.
Right, so Vince has got a question.
Just number 11, the North Country wine growers. I know we do hear on the media there's quite a downturn in the wine industry. I wonder what was the feelings at the meeting? How are they managing it all?
Pen from Lake Estate wasn't there at our last meeting, so I'm not sure how she didn't obviously.
Although I think there was a verbal report to say that the volumes, you know, there's a lot of competition with Marlborough, and there's a lot of, some of our vineyards may actually just dump their grapes because the demand is reduced. Nationally, internationally, wine consumption has reduced. But the other thing she talked about, wasn't it, Tom, was also the season hasn't been supportive to the production because of the botulism, I think it's called, the bacteria that, you know, with the additional wet or damp conditions. So yeah, so they're aware of it, but certainly it was a second-hand report, as Tom said. Ken was not there.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, there are huge stocks that they haven't been able to shift, which means they can't produce anymore. I think that there isn't much storage capacity. doesn't appear to be a market. That's why many of the vineyards are going to let the grapes go.
So the choices make it beautiful.
So I just want to to attention that there is, you know, part of the
Yeah.
community that's struggling with it.
Just as an aside, I'll come to you in a minute, Pauline. I think the community team have also been, have some sort of awareness of the, you know, there could be job changes, there could be, so that seasonal production. I had a conversation, Joe Sherwood talked to me about that the other day, so there is certainly a growing awareness of perhaps the impact of that primary production cycle within our district. Pauline, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, probably a question to the CE. It was great to see the Great Rides funding announcement there with some more money coming in for that. But it piqued my memory actually, around about 3 years ago, pre-election, there was a wee carrot dangled in front of us in regards to a great walk. And we seem to have heard no more. I just wondered if that was off the cards or.
I followed that up multiple times at the time. So this was a promise made by Christopher Luxon before he became Prime Minister that there would be great through the Moles work, which essentially was from Kahatara River through to Molesworth, where it joined up by Van Pemberley dock. Controlled land, said it was too expensive, can't be done, etc. We chased them up multiple times. I went to the minister. He sent me back to dock again. I went to the local MP, got sent back to dock again. So it seems that dock are determined not to do it.
I can still remember the cycle, won't we?
That's right, when that 3 years.
Yeah.
So just coming back to the report, the update Tom has provided us, is there any other questions in regard to the tourism update? No, that being the case, perhaps are you willing to move that, Tom? Thank you. Do I have a second for Tom for the tourism board update? Thank you, Chris. The questions around that, all in agreement that is that right? That's carried. Thank you. And last but by no means least, we've got the Youth Council report. Perhaps Chris and or Pauline, if you would like to provide a bit of an insight to that. Hitting the ground running, these young people, aren't they? Thanks, Pauline.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, I come away from those meetings just going, wow, what a phenomenal group of young people and a phenomenal group of skills and ideas and feedback that are there, you know, within arm's reach really. And, you know, they're so keen to be a part of what is Hurunui present, but also the future. And I just think, you know, the fact that we have such a strong youth council is just phenomenal. There was very, very capable vying for the chairperson and deputy chairperson role. It was very, very tight, the number of voting rounds, but it's delivered us a very capable chair and deputy chair. And at that meeting, we heard from Dr. Amanda Warder. If you haven't heard her speak, I've heard her speak to senior primary students, but she was on the inaugural youth council, and she now has a doctorate in biology. And to hear her talk about her journey, and that was really relevant to the young people sitting around that table in regards to you know, hurdles and persistence and overcoming many things. Yeah, just excellent. So there's nothing really specific to report, but yeah, phenomenal group of young people, and fantastic to see them already starting to take an active part in the community committees and the community boards and observer roles there.
That's great. Thank you, Pauline. Chris, nothing to add?
They're going to add a submission about the speed zone at the bottom end of the town. But yes, I reiterate a bit of what Pauline's already said. What was really impressive about Dr. Ward was her detailed battle she had with dyslexia to get herself through university. And I think a lot of the kids got inspired by it, or at least show that there's always a way, no matter what you do. No, I'm like you, I come out of that meeting with huge grin and buzzing. They're just an incredible bunch of people. Yeah, the future's bright. There you go.
Great.
We don't say much there.
No, don't say anything.
We're just there as a support system, really.
And
They've got it
just-
sorted.
Just as an aside, one of you can move, one you can second in a minute, but just as an aside, Amanda grew up in our district in Harden and is the daughter of one of Jason's team. So she is homegrown.
Yeah,
Mm.
very much.
Really, really proud. So, do you want to move it?
Happy to move it.
Happy to second, Chris?
Okay,
Oh, sorry, we've
So
got a
I'm
question,
just,
I was racing.
The Trivia Community Committee's point it's actually overextended a bit, so we've got no youth councillor on our community committee.
Yeah, he was very clear at the meeting that he had a willingness and a wish to do it, but unfortunately the Cheviot Community Committee meetings clash with the Board of Trustees meetings, and he is the student representative.
But he's just overextended a bit. But we talked a wee bit about it at our last meeting. Before, when we couldn't get a youth, we got someone from the Board of Trustees of the school, or someone involved with the school, just so we can get a bit of perspective of, if we can't get a young person, because it's a very small pool of older students at that school, so you're only talking, a handful of people that could do it, really. So it gets a bit awkward to get someone where, last time we had, yeah.
The secretary's
And she was very good. She put a perspective on what was happening at the school, and it just gave us a bit more network.
Yeah, so I think Vince, what you're raising, there is a real awareness from the youth council perspective, but probably, might just take a bit of, local knowledge of actually how to manage that as well, if you're looking for a local perspective, so, yeah. So we've got to move on to seconder. We've had a couple of questions, and it's been cited the enthusiasm for this year. So if there's no more questions around that, I'll put that to recommendation. All in agreement, please say aye. Those against, that motion is carried. Thank you. So we are now going to break for lunch, councillors, and I noticed our good friends from the museum have arrived. So when we come back in, we will be in public excluded. You will have all read the public excluded section of your agenda and the reasons for making this presentation information, that we don't want to prejudice the commercial position under the sections of the Act. So with that in mind, would someone please move that when we return back at 1 o'clock that we are on public excluded? Thank you, Tom. Do I have a second? Thank you, Chris. So all in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that motion's carried. Dave, you would have got that as well. So when we're back in PE, so we're just conscious of, not sure where you are and how many people are around you, but that we just need to respect that process.
I'm Murray. I'm gonna leave and not come back after lunch. I'll go and enjoy this island.
Okay, so
Can I take? Yeah.
So can I just?
Yeah, I thought.
Are you?
I thought PE might have been before lunch. So yeah, I'm not going to be here after lunch.
Okay.
Thank you.
We will note that in the minutes. Thanks, Dave. Audio, go.